Good day everyone, I am Caribbean M. DAPAR and today we're going to talk and learn about the arts of one of the most historic river civilization that ever lived, the Babylon of Mesopotamia. So sit down, relax, and let's learn. Before anything else, let's have an overview of what will be the contents of this video. First is we're going to define some terms that we will be needing through the course of this lesson. Second, we're going to talk about the early Babylonian period arts, and we will also be giving an emphasis to the famous artwork of this period, which is the Low Code of Hammurabi. Next is we're going to talk about the arts of the Kassite dynasty and the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Lastly, we'll have a summarization of what we have learned in this video, and that's it. Now let's define these words. First, we have the word Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia is a region in Southwest Asia that is located in between the rivers of Tigris and Euphrates. It comes from the Greek word meso, which means in the middle or in between of, and potamos, which means river. Thus, it literally means in between or in the middle of a river. And trivia. Did you know that Mesopotamia is the earliest civilization developed? Next, we have the river civilization. A river civilization is an agricultural nation or society situated beside a major river system, and people relies on it for survival. These ancient societies flourished due to the fertile land, reliable water access, and transportation advantages the rivers provide. The early Babylonian period or the Old Babylonian Empire goes back from 1800s to 1595 BC. It concentrates in Hammurabi's dynasty and houses artistic scene of architecture, sculpture, and cylinder seals. We have an example of a cylinder seal here. Shown in the presentation are examples of the architecture and sculpture of the early Babylonian period. First, let's talk about this amazing architecture of the early Babylonian, which is the Etemenanke Temple. Etemenanke is a Sumerian word which means house of the foundation of heaven and earth, and it is commonly known today as the Tower of Babel. Another artwork shown is the sculpture Queen of the Night. The sculpture features a female nude figure viewed from the front who wears the horned helmet of a Babylonian goddess and carries a rod and the ring of justice as symbol of her divine status. It is said that this figure represents the goddess Ishtar, which is an ancient Mesopotamian goddess of love, war, and fertility, and it could also be Ishtar's rival sister, which is the deity Ereshkigal, the lord of the underworld. Today, the Queen of the Night sculpture is now available and can be seen in the British Museum. The Code of Hammurabi is an elongated stone slab that is around 2.24 meters tall. It featured a seated Hammurabi receiving laws from the sun god Shamash, emphasizing the king's supernatural power and the legitimacy of his rule. Underneath are 3,600 lines of cuneiform characters setting out the 282 Code of Hammurabi, and it is the oldest set of written laws in history. It is also the first systematic codification of people's rights, duties, and penalties for infringements. The famous phrase "an eye for an eye" originated here. Moving on to the Kassite dynasty. Up until 1595 BC, the Babylon was ruled by Hammurabi's descendants, but when a Hittite expedition reached Babylon, the early Babylonian period was then ended. The Kassite takes over Babylon and introduced new materials for their artworks like bronze and ivory, but still, they incorporate Babylonian conventions in the royal iconography and inscriptions. The artwork shown is an art the Kassite period is best known for. It is a fragment of a stone monument known as kuduro or boundary stones. These monumental records of real estate meant to last for eternity, and it continues to be popular even after the end of the Kassite period. The Kassite craftsmen also worked with clay to create a carefully modeled representations of human and animals. An example of this is the mastiff sculpture, which is basically a sculpture of a dog. Kassite artists also experimented with the molding and glazing of brick, a new technology that was developed further in later Neo-Babylonian period. An example of this innovation is a panel with striding lion which is shown in the presentation. The Neo-Babylonian Empire, also known as the Chaldean Empire, created an artistic style inspired by their ancient Mesopotamian background. They focus on grandeur and symmetry in large-scale architecture and is best known for their architectural achievements. One of the architectural feats of the Neo-Babylonian period is the Ishtar Gate. The Ishtar Gate served as the main entry into Babylon from the north, and it was the city's eighth entry gate, measuring more than 12 meters in height. It was dedicated to the goddess Ishtar, and in case anyone was unsure who was responsible for this unique structure, Nebuchadnezzar inscribed a message in the limestone stating, "I placed wild bulls and ferocious dragons in the gateways, and adorned them with luxurious splendor, so that people might gaze on them in wonder." A reconstruction of the Ishtar Gate and the processional path now stands in the Pergamon Museum in Berlin. Another architectural feat of the Neo-Babylonian period is the ever-famous Hanging Gardens of Babylon. According to Greek and Roman historians, Nebuchadnezzar II was also responsible for the famous Hanging Gardens of Babylon. It were characterized as a rising sequence of tiered gardens filled with a diverse range of trees, shrubs, and vines. The Hanging Gardens is one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon is depicted by the two images shown. First is the ruins and rubbles of it, which is its present state. While we can also see an image, but this is only just a technology-based presentation of what was once to be the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. The Babylonian period ended in 539 BC when Persian ruler Cyrus the Great conquered Babylon. This signaled the end of the Neo-Babylonian Empire and the beginning of the Persian era in Mesopotamia. And now let's have a short summarization of what we have learned for today's lesson. Babylon is divided into three major periods, which is the early Babylonian period, the Kassite dynasty, and the Neo-Babylonian period. The early Babylonian period was famous for the Code of Hammurabi and various ziggurats like the Etemenanki Temple. The Kassites are non-Babylonians who conquered Babylon and adopted Babylonian conventions and introduced new materials like bronze and ivory. The Neo-Babylonian is the revival of the old Babylonian period traditions, giving birth to some of the most beautiful architecture that was ever built. These are my references for today's lesson, and you can also visit these links to learn more about the Babylonian history. And that would be all. Thank you for listening.